Richard K from Price Action Income, and welcome to this week's live analysis market overview session. So we kicked this off last week by looking at some of the major markets. Whoops, got some alerts going off there. And I'm going to recap there where we started last week. I'm going to look at the ES, the dollar index, gold, crude oil, and natural gas, which was that trade idea I gave you last week. Then we also had a few comments in the comment section below that people want me to have a look at the pound US dollar, so I'll be having a look at that. And then another subscriber actually wrote our support team and asked if I can cover a little bit of how I approach my entries. So that we're all going to try to fit into the 30 minutes that we have, or 30 minutes or so. If there's some time left, then you're more than welcome to send questions our way. I have Nathan manning the chat box, and then he'll relay that to me, and I'll be more than happy to answer that for you guys. As always, guys, what I'm going to show during the sessions reflect my own trading views and opinions and does not reflect or constitute any trading advice whatsoever. So we're all adults here, hopefully not any children watching, but you have to make your own trading decisions. But obviously I'll try to help you guys show you what my forecasts show using my market geometry techniques. All right, enough of me chatting about that. The ES we looked at yesterday, S&P 500, looking at the E-mini. I explained how we doubled up these pitchforks and how these angles have been working extremely well on the way up. Last week we had a pullback to this upper 50%, what I call a dashed median line. And I'm still viewing or still bullish until we reach this upper red line, which I call upper red warning line. Currently lies around about the 447, let's say 4495. Could easily have an overshot there, but I'll be very wary staying long into this area here. Again, still same levels I had last week. I do think this is a danger level. Price breaks the 4142-ish level towards a 4126 level. That's the first warning signs that we might have seen a top for this year. The second one, in my opinion, that get broken is this low here on 4031 to about 4053. If this gets taken out, I think there's a very good chance that we've put in a strong top. Obviously, if everything works out nicely, after price reaches this upper red warning line. So we might still grind higher. Let's see what happens there. We'll recap again where ES stands from price structure perspective next week again. Okay, then we looked at the dollar index. Last week I mentioned that price fell short of this low in February 2018. I'm still viewing this as a potential A, B, C. Price is not reached since we had this jump up in Jan. Went up into a high in March, came down, failed to break this low again, and we eventually price moved to the upside again. I'm still viewing this, whatever's happening here, as a correction. Last week we said that we might be seeing some sort of an ending diagonal into this area. I want to see price reach this upper median line of this blue pitchfork. I still think we can get there. What is very interesting is if you go to a daily time frame, that price has been respecting a channel using this low. Those highs and those highs to this low, and we recently bounced off that low, or the lowest channel line yesterday. That was on the 27th. Price now continuing higher. Guys, this might be just a slow move to the upside. I do think that the dollar index eventually will still go higher. Again, it has not broken above the 31st of March high. I think we can still reach that. Unless, price drops from here. If that happens, and because this low failed to take out this low, and if this fails and that high and we don't get another high above here, we might even start seeing a much larger, drawn out triangle correction that could take multiple days or even months to complete. But for now, I think we can still go higher. That brings me to gold. If the dollar index goes higher, we might even move lower in gold. Cross correlation obviously there to what the dollar is doing. And another thing I've been seeing here is a slow grind move to the downside. I'm actually seeing this as a potential sort of not an ending diagonal per se, maybe an ending diagonal C wave, i.e. an A, B, C, meaning that we might even do this, move down into this first week of August, make another move to the upside, and then see a much larger move to the downside. And how that correlates obviously with dollar index is what we're going to keep an eye on. If this low gets broken on a dollar index, I would say we're going to correct deeper, but I'm still going to maintain that we can go higher. And however that reacts, I'm very interested in this sort of time area within the first week of August for potential move higher or lower, obviously, in gold. We'll have to see where price is by then. Okay, crude oil. Guys, crude oil we looked at last week, and I identified the zone that we might see a lower high materialize. And the only pattern for me that fits into this being a potential lower high is that if this was an A, B, C, it did react from the zone I identified with my members previously. We had a strong move to the downside, retest that, came down again. Where is it going to pull back to? Perhaps the center line of this channel that I drew, and let me just see if I can give you a bigger view of that without wasting too much time. High to this low gave us this recent drop low over here. And if we run a standard pitchfork using that high to this low in March 2021 to this recent high in July, and where they cross is where price finds support. It also had what I call a bullish flank doji. Price also reached a previous area where we had resistance. Resistance now turned support, moved higher. Now we do have crude oil inventory scheduled at 10:30 a.m. EST today. That might be a make or break scenario and actually give us some sort of indication where crude oil might move to over the next week or so. So, although I'm saying it might move lower, I would like to see a proper decent trade to the downside. If we break above this center line, then we might retest the zone or even make another high, but then eventually I'll still be bearish crude oil. It's all about patience, guys, and watching price action very closely. This is a risky proposition. If this was an ABC, you have your X wave that's typically sharp in nature and runs one directional, exactly what we had here. They tend to make V bottoms and V tops, and then you get another ABC to the downside to complete a Y wave. That is a possibility, but I'm going to keep a close eye on today's crude oil inventories to see what happens next. Then last week, guys, I gave you this trade idea on natural gas. Price reached the upper two median lines of different slope pitchforks. Let me just go out to, I think we used a daily, even a weekly. I identified a zone between the $4 and $4.20 handles. Price has reached that even on the weekly now. It kind of just overshot that and then closed below it again. For me, to be dead honest, I want to see a change in price structure. This move into this high I'm counting as a 1-2 potential strong third impulsive wave. Price then failed to break the area of the first wave, which is typically how Elliott wave works. If we do now make another, I don't want to see it moving much higher than the zone and then get a reversal. I would say that would be the first sign to get into a trade here. Alternatively, if price breaks below the 3.7, well, let me write this up so you guys can actually rewatch this. 3.75 to, let's say, the 3.8. Oops, 3.80 level. A strong decline below there would indicate that we might have topped already and that we can probably get a deeper move to the downside. So typically this is how I would do it. Identify a zone before where I'll see a reversal, and then even wait for a change in price structure, i.e. let's say price making a lower low and then a confirmed lower high after price breaks that lower low, to indicate that we might have a change in trend, and then start looking for entry opportunities. Right, so thus far we had a reaction there. Not to say it's over yet. We could still make another move into there and then get a reversal. It might very well have not completed yet until, and this is for me that zone that I really want to be watching. And I've marked that for you guys over here. Alright guys, and we had quite a few members or subscribers actually ask me to have a look at the pound US dollar. And this is what I've got for you guys today. I quite like to perform long-term analysis. I want to be knowing where we got long-term market geometry lines, and quite often they'll give you angles that you will find support and resistance at. We've overshot this center median line using the three major swings into obviously this bullish move that we had on the upside here. And I used this low in October 2016 to this high in April 2018 to this low in March last year. I angled this to a standard pitchfork, and I prefer the standard pitchfork because of this very strong bullish move to the upside. Then if we use the three anchor points or pivot points prior to the strong move to the upside, you'll see that price broke above this center median line over here. It came down, it pulled back to it and got rejected again. Now, very interesting is that we had a move lower into this lower 50% dash median line here. And currently on the weekly, it does look like we might end up with what's called a bullish flank doji. That's just a term I give it. Obviously, there will be so many different ways that people might call reversal candlestick patterns, but we definitely had a pin bar here. Price did undershoot this sort of low median line, low 50% dash median line. And if this sort of closes near the highs, then we might have seen a low, guys. I've got smaller time frame pitchforks that I also included, just to show you that we got a confluence at this low. And let's go to a daily time frame. Yeah. So we had a move into the center median line. We had a one touch, second touch, third touch, and price reached this low red warning line of a smaller pitchfork, and also the pitchfork running also downwards that tracked this downward move. Price did undershoot the center median line of this one, but then moved higher. We also have here a familiar reversal candlestick pattern that I like following, which is called the 3 inside up for a bullish move, and obviously you'll call it 3 inside down for a bearish move. Now how that works is quite often this is exactly how it works. You'll get a red candle, let's say into a low, and then your 2 consecutive candles that breaks above at least that low the high of that red candle. In this case, we had 2 of those. Very strong move, and remember on the weekly it does look like we might have that bullish flank doji appearing. That being said, what are other traders thinking about here? And I won't be surprised if some people might think that we're getting some sort of head and shoulder pattern here, although this high just pipped this one and we had a strong reversal to the downside. So okay, we're just getting some questions. Carolyn wants me to look at AUD USD. I'll quickly do that just after this analysis. I'm thinking that although we're going to head higher, and obviously we might have a strong low here, that we'll have to look at this upper median line here at currently that lies at 1.4022, and that remember that long-term weekly one that's hanging here at 1.4062. What will happen if price reaches that? With the dollar index, that might still strengthen. This might just be a short-term bounce to the upside. We might get still a pullback. I think with a lot of currencies, until the dollar index actually does change strong direction, and I still think it can be moving to the downside in months or so to come, that we might see some pretty messy price action in your euro, US dollar, pound, US dollar, Japanese yen, your majors that form the basket trades are, or the basket currencies that forms the dollar index. So for now, definitely looks bullish. But be careful. I'm still watching the dollar index for what could be another move to the upside, i.e. we could see short-term moves down in crude in the gold, and we can also see still a decline in the pound US dollar, although it did bounce here. All right, so before we look at the AUD USD, we have Carolyn asking a question about that. I've had a question recently about, we still have a few minutes to go, about entries. And this is a good example that I want to show you in two different methods that I like to follow with regards to entries. This was a trade idea that I actually shown to members back around about March this year. We were following the price action in copper, and it made a very familiar pattern in the shape of a symmetrical triangle. And we had lines drawn like this. And quite often I teach my members that you won't know that you're really dealing with a triangle until, let me just label this for you guys. As you all know, or maybe might not know, is that triangles move in 5 waves. Sorry, that was actually the low over there. You have an A, B, C, D, and you quite often will not know that you're really dealing with a triangle until the time that you anticipate that you might be dealing with a D wave. You identify an area where a D wave might end, which typically, these waves typically end at fib retracement levels. Your 0.618 and your 0.786 is typically your strongest levels, which we have here. So price could very well have gone higher here. If it didn't, you anticipate, this is all running sideways, and now you have a move to the downside. And that gives you a very, very high probability that you're now dealing with an E wave. And an E wave will typically end also at a fib retracement level, and you'll measure that from your previous 2 swings would be your C to your D to anticipate where an E might end. And E, again in this case, pulled back to the 0.786. And here we had an ABCX ABC. I really like to do something similar to this. Run a zone between a 0.786 and 0.618% and see what happens when price reaches that zone prior to that actually happening. And then also using market geometry, in this case a pitchfork, to identify where this correction might end. So we have a confluence of a fib level and also a lower median line of a pitchfork where price then reacted to the upside. Now, very importantly, and this is how entries work for me, I want to see momentum slow down into an area. And typically what I do is look at a MACD, and I want to see the histogram show me divergence. We did not get that in this case. So recently, and if you guys are TradingView users, I found this little nifty little indicator, which is called divergence histogram for many indicators. And I found that it works especially well at finding divergences. I think he looks at RSI, different momentum oscillators that you might get. And he incorporates all of these to generate these little histogram signals. Green for when you have bullish divergence and bearish divergence at highs, i.e. this red one we have over here. For me, any momentum divergence is useless unless it happens at an area of market geometry at a zone that you identified beforehand. So this will be one of the conditions that I want to see. Okay, in this case, we had momentum divergence. Price moved higher. And this is what I would call just a reversal candlestick. It actually made the lowest low in the sequence at a lower median line, and it closed way above this previous one over here. And that would have been an entry a few ticks above that. If, for example, you've missed that entry, I have a secondary entry which I call the velocity hook setup. And this is a bit more of a conservative type of entry where you want to see price move. Let's say you think that this was a move to the upside or the start of the the beginning of a new uptrend. In our case, we did identify the zone beautifully. You have a lower low, failed lower low. You want to see lower lows until you get a candle that fails to make a lower low. In this case, it would only have been up here, and that could have been a secondary entry. But the problem with this is sometimes you can have huge moves moving into the direction. You'll get, not a great sort of full, in this case a bit higher up. But considering that we were dealing with such a large triangle, the upside potential was massive on this trade. Let me give you another example of a velocity hook setup. So let's say here we got a lower low, lower low, lower low, lower low, lower low, fails to make a new low, and you'll have a buy opportunity above there. In this case, it did make a pip, but that's quite often where you obviously need to know where to place your stop loss, and then price moved to the upside. So just to answer that question quickly, one identify a zone beforehand. In this case, it was a triangle. Price reacted from a fib level, moved into a zone, moved into a lower median line of a pitchfork, and we had a reaction to the upside. We had momentum divergence, and that is how I do my entries. Right, guys, we've got quite a few questions coming in here. Carolyn's asking me to have a look at the AUD USD. Let me just make sure I'm not showing you a lot of my other analysis on here. Okay. Here we have the AUD USD. I just want to see if on my other screen I have a chart that I've pulled up before. Can't really find it now. Just bear with me, Carolyn. Very interesting on the AUD USD. It is a market that I'm currently looking at. I think, and I won't be surprised if price pulls back into this low over here. I think what we've seen here now is a completion of 5 waves to the upside, however you want to count that. And we might as well see a move back into this level. AUD USD is looking very weak. I would expect soon that we might see a little bit of a bounce, but I do expect for quite a while still for price to move low on the AUD USD. If we had to look at market geometry, I want to look at the 3 prior swings prior to this move to the downside and see which setting fits this decline best. Let me just get that. Oops, there we go. Let's move this to a shift. The shift pitchfork's been working really well here. We had support, finally broken, some support and finally broken. And we likely, I won't say immediately, but going to gravitate towards this lower red warning line here, which might provide short-term entries to the upside if that is a trade you want to take. But I would definitely try to rather be short. I think over the near term we'll might get a bounce here. Obviously, you need to time these sort of things, but I do think we can gravitate lower towards this low red warning line. Currently lies at 0.7 to 10-ish sort of handle, or even lower. Obviously, it will slope lower the longer price takes to get there. We can use these prior swings here and change that to a standard pitchfork, which gives us a similar type of slope, similar sort of area price might eventually reach. So guys, I will definitely be very wary of Australian dollar, US dollar. For any long-term longs, I would really try to maybe anticipate if we do see some correction. Let's say price fails to break this recent low and starts moving higher, and treat that as a potential correction. And obviously you'll have to keep on it the whole time until you find an area you might see resistance set in, and then trade this to the downside. I'm still, my viewpoint on the AUD USD is that it is still bearish and could still be bearish for time to come. Then we have Bhavesh asking me about the US dollar Swiss franc. Let's have a look at that. See guys, I do have market geometry going on here. Let me just see if I have this on my, what was it, a US dollar Swiss franc, right? Yeah. Same thing. I think we can still move lower, although it's been a very strong move to the upside here. I have not done any long-term work on this yet. But after such a strong decline, we had what looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is where volatility can sometimes muck about with your analysis, because very strong decline, strong impulse to the upside. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves. Do we have an ABC here? And is the US dollar Swiss franc going high now? It could very well be if the dollar index also go higher. But I'll be watching this sort of previous highs. Let me get the marker out here. Horizontal rise. That sort of level, and then let's say the center median line. If price gets drawn towards those, be careful to hold any longs to the upside. That being said, again, also a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 move here. Was this an ABC? Are we still correcting? Could very well be. I might next time do a little bit more in-depth analysis on US dollar Swiss franc. It's just for the sort of time limits that we have with these live sessions that it's quite difficult to perform a proper analysis. Generally, I take around about 2 hours to perform proper analysis on charts that I've not traded before. Mustafa's asking Euro US dollar. Good that you're asking that. It's actually a trade idea I'm having with my members. I'm going to start looking at that in depth tomorrow. That's not the one. That's the one. Yeah. The Euro US dollar recently found support. Let me go to a weekly. And I drew a pitchfork here. And the reason I chose this is a shift pitchfork using this low in 2017, high in Feb 2018, low in March 2020. Strong impulsive move to the upside. I'm viewing this as a potential ABC, XABC, or just an ABC, an incomplete ABC. And that's why it ties in with this, I think, strength that we'll still see in the dollar index. So likely still see the Euros dollar move lower. It is currently strongly, finding support at this center median line of this long-term pitchfork. But that being said, if it does break it, and Mustafa, this is a good idea for you, if it breaks this center median line And let's say we get a daily close below the 1.1751 area, which was last week's low. I'm just going to get rid of these lines. That we could still be drawn towards this lower center or lower median line of this pitchfork. I'm seeing this currently as just a correction. Over the big picture view, guys, I still think the dollar index is going higher, like I mentioned before, but it is also just a correction. So, if you want to execute shorts or think about shorts, I think we can be drawn into the, let me label this for you. And remember, this might change because as long as longer time price takes to get to this level, the lower this pitchfork slopes. So looking at 1.625. Am I right now? 1.625. I'm missing a 1 day. To 1.685. And obviously keeping an eye on what the dollar index is doing if price does reach this sort of area. But it could still be drawn down towards that area, definitely. Daily. Bhavesh thinks we Euro-US dollar time frame. I'm looking at a triangle forming. Can you mark A, B, C, D, E for me, please? Bhavesh, visually, I don't see a triangle. Unless price does not break here, it shoots up higher and then comes down again, then I would say we have a triangle. That's also a possibility. So for me, I won't be trading short going into this level here. I'll wait for a break below this 1.751 and then see if we can short it into this sort of zone over here. And again, then we might have strong support. So you'll be just a short-term sort of short to the downside. That being said, price fails to break this low. This high failed to break that high. So it's making, failures. Price might very well, let me get this out. Let's have a look at, where is that now? There. If this was an A, and that was a B, and let's say this is a C, and then it goes higher, fails to break that, and if it comes down again, then I'll tell you we are very likely dealing with a E wave. But this, in my opinion, will probably take weeks to months to complete. And if that was a scenario, and the only time I would say that is a scenario if we fail to break this and we move much higher, especially to a fib retracement level. .618, 0.786, sort of that area. And then move lower, then I think we might have a triangle. And triangles, you label A, B, C, D, E. So if the trend was up, you want to label it opposite what the trend's doing, because I see it as a correction. A, B, obviously if we fail here, D, and then anticipate an E wave. And let me just get rid of that for the time being. And you would label from your A wave to your C wave, or sorry, a trend line, and your B wave to where you believe your D wave ended. And at that time, when you get a strong decline, you've got a high probability that you're dealing with a triangle. And what you'll do then is run a fib retracement from your previous two swings and identify a zone that you want to see a reversal. 0.618, 0.618. And see for reaction to upside and then get in that. And that's how an ABCDE would look. Buwan is asking, can you give some advice of how to avoid panic selling during trading? Buwan, very good question. That I would believe comes with experience. Experience can only be taught by, in my opinion, been trading obviously for a long time, and obviously trading with real money. So I'm not telling you to trade with real money, so I don't want to get myself into trouble here, but it's very easy for some to make money on a simulation account, and it's a complete different story doing that when you're trading with real money. So the real life hard lessons come trading with real money. But how do you avoid panic selling? Obviously having a plan beforehand, exactly knowing where your median lines are on a bigger time frame. A good example is someone that asked me the other day, it's like he took a long, I believe it was, I can't remember, US dollar, Swiss franc or something. But he asked me to have a look at market geometry, and I went back on the weekly time frame, and he went long, and the market immediately reversed against him. And what happened was that he was unaware of that market geometry lines because he didn't do his homework. So I'm not being nasty to the guy. I'm just saying that if you have a very well planned trade, or you planned your trade really well, and you really wait and have patience for price to pull into an area where you believe you want to trade from, and then you look for, let's say, reversal signals, momentum divergence, all that sort of stuff, then you're on the right side. And obviously if you have a stop loss, you need to also always obviously use a stop loss. You need to know where that stop loss is going to be prior to your entry, and you must 100% accept the risk before you get into a trade. So panic selling, could be it's a broad sort of concept. Is panic selling, is the masses panic selling, or are you panic selling? So if you're panic selling, it tells me that, you haven't had a proper plan. Do you know where your targets are? All these things require a really good strategy. It's also why I developed the exponential profit system, which is, you probably see a link to that in the page, in the chat box that Nathan will post there. That is a course that I developed to, address things like this, how to plan properly, be patient enough to, wait for setups to happen and take that. And a lot of these things obviously come with experience. The longer you execute a strategy that that really works well, then you can definitely avoid that panic selling. Hopefully that sort of answers your question, everyone. In any case, guys, I'm way over the time for our limit this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. What I'm going to do is end it over here. As always, if you are interested in more detailed analysis, we do have some other subscriptions that you might view with our EPS forecast report that we do on a daily basis, and then also my exponential profit system course, which basically gives you a really good building blocks as to how to perform market geometry and find really good trade setups in trends when you have corrections, performing market geometry analysis. And that's all I have time for today, guys. Thanks for participating. Thanks for all the questions that you sent to me. Always great to see some participation from the subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please do subscribe, guys. If we can really build this channel out, if you like my content, then please, next week at the same time, or maybe we'll try a different time slot. We'll let you know beforehand, and I'll see you then. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your week and stay safe out there. All the best. Thank you. Goodbye.